I wanted to real quickly talk about a new award that TASBO did this past year called the Award of Excellence in Financial Management. And developed this, we developed this award uh, in response to, we keep hearing that schools, either from our community or the legislature, that we don't manage our finances appropriately. As a matter of fact, I was on the phone right before this. Representative Huberty is determined for House Bill 3445 to pass, and that's the one that will limit school districts' fund balances. And they're going to vote on it again today in the Pub Ed Committee. And so, but to listen to him on the House floor as they were debating the House Bill 3 cleanup earlier this week, I was very troubled that he would have this impression that we don't have our students' needs forefront of mind. And so our hope is that by doing this award, number one, you can celebrate with your community and your surrounding staff about how well you are managing your finances at your district, but you can also use it. We can also take best practices from this to kind of showcase on a statewide level. We've had the Purchasing Award of Merit for more than 15 years, and this award is kind of styled like that. We have this past year, there were 10 districts which applied in the middle of a pandemic, and we are able to recognize this year. And I hope next year that we have fivefold the number of districts. So I'm looking forward to getting some applications from you at Region 1. Applications aren't due till November, but I suggest that as you're preparing for your audit, that you begin gathering these documents, and I'll kind of walk through some of the things that you're going to have to apply. But I will tell you that May 13th, TASBO will be having an informational webinar on this award as well, and we'll spend much more time going into detail, and we'll have some of the recipients of this year's award kind of walk you through their processes so that you're not just starting from scratch. So I'm going to highlight some of the things that are required. You have the required criteria, you have the scoring sheet, but I want to make sure that, if you have, and I'll open it up for questions when we get done. Number one, you have to have an org chart. And that, on the purchasing one, we always say the purchasing has to be on the org chart. So sometimes you need two. And that's the same way with this. You need the district org chart, which I'm sure finance is on somewhere, but then also your departmental org chart and how, those layers of approval and job descriptions. Job descriptions are something that we let slide sometimes. I was looking at I was updating our job descriptions as we get ready to come back fully as a team to the office. And realized that we were woefully behind. I would fail this right now. And so I'm working on job descriptions as we speak. You have a requirement to have a transparency page on your website. I know you all have 5 years of budget data, and all these things which you see here are required category. If you don't have these, then we need to work on getting them and apply next year. Proof of bank reconciliation seems to become more and more of a hang-up as districts are having to transition to new software programs. But sure, regular bank reconciliations, I can't stress enough how important they are. And I could tell you some horror stories from this year from districts that we've had to help get caught up. We talked through the publication required notices. If you have a management letter, maybe the response, it's not always bad to get a management letter. I used to get really frustrated with my auditors when I got one, but it always led to better business practices. And so that's what we would be looking for. And best practice metrics. How are you as a district implementing those best practices? Are your procedures documented? If you have self-funded health information, is that appropriately reviewed and communicated? And procurement, if you're a recipient of the Purchasing Award of Merit, certainly we'll just slide that in there. But if not, there's some other things that you can do there to get that piece. We talk about the education level of the lead of the department. and TASBO certification, because TASBO certification is so very important. We did not learn about how to do state aid and how to purchase items and all those things when we were all getting our bachelor's degrees at the university. As a matter of fact, I think I had one chapter on governmental accounting, and I thought it was really weird. And so, the guy upstairs sometimes hears things that you're thinking. And so I've spent the last 40 years, if you can believe it, doing governmental accounting. And staff training, making sure that your staff is being trained both internally and externally. So meetings like this would count, as well as TASBO meetings and TASBO trainings. Staffing guidelines for your staffing controls. Smaller districts certainly look at staffing guidelines differently than larger districts, but I think we all have a process to make sure that we control the number of staff members that we have on site. Again, that performance metrics and that staffing budget, because staffing, it's 85% typically of your budget. Budget management, do you communicate your budget calendar? Schools first, was there something that was identified that you're having to work through budgetarily? Some districts got upside down on administrative costs this last year. I've seen one get upside down on staffing. And I've seen many districts get upside down on the cash on hand calculation. And those all eventually circle back to the budget calendar. Analysis of the appraised values, that was a terrific presentation that you just had. And I'm glad to see that you're working together on analyzing those appraised values. As a matter of fact, I sent Connie a note and asked her if I could have it and listen to it again, because you all have issues in the Valley that I have not had to deal with the border and the trade back and forth. And do you have expense reimbursement policies? And I would call that employee and student. Those are different. And at some point we'll be traveling again. But until then, but you still need those policies. Are you monitoring your revenue? Are you accruing salary? Do you wait till you're in? Do you do it monthly? Do you have adequate cross training? And do you communicate with your stakeholder groups? When I began, I could do the budget in isolation. I could certainly work with the departments around me and we could present it to the board and we would move on. Those days are gone, particularly in a time of social media. We need to be communicating with our community, with our parent groups, to tell them exactly what we're planning to do with those budget dollars and how we're going to utilize them, how it's going to impact teaching and learning. Facility use, we've been shut down for this past year, but facility use will come back. Do you have a policy to ensure that you're recovering district resources for that facility use? And do you have a procurement card policy? And what does that look like? Cash management, investments, although, what do you get? 0.5% now. But, we still have to have a wise investment policy, make sure our funds are collateralized, distributed in our bigger districts, and so that all the money's not in one spot. How do you operate your campus activity funds? Are they decentralized? Are they centralized? There was a move this year by a vendor to get a bill carried by Senator Taylor, and I don't believe it ever actually saw the light of day, but to require districts to have cash management policies and a cash management program. Well, it was kind of specific to that vendor, but you do need a cash management policy, and you do need to have processes and procedures for those cash points at the decentralized sites. Now, the pandemic has kind of sped us up to credit card processing. That's still a form of cash. It's still something you need to process for in that internal control training as well. You want to know how you're communicating your financial reports, your availability of information. The more, we're in a world of data, and you can have lots of data, but very little information. And I think it's important that we are judicious in the details we share on our website with our community, but we don't have to put everything. And, the impetus for this award was, number one, to celebrate, but also to kind of get our lawmakers to back off from the posting check registers. And again, that thought that we just don't manage our funds well, because I, for one, believe very strongly that we do. And I certainly know that your primary focus is on the students in your district. Annual financial reports, interim financial reports, just another section. Are you letting your board know each month where you stand? Again, 40 years ago, we didn't necessarily do a monthly financial report to the board. That wasn't a good practice. It's much more transparent, and certainly better business practices to have that annual report to your board, that monthly report to your board. I've lost my clicker. And then your projections. Are you monitoring your enrollment in ADA? Are you monitoring your property values? You began that process here today with your presentation. Are you looking at your expenses per student? Often districts get in trouble because we keep our expenses going, but our student population has changed. It will be a very tough year this next budget year as we all try to figure out. I don't know where you're at on enrollment, but a lot of our kindergartners and first graders are not here. And my hope is that they come back. But it will be interesting and difficult to estimate what your expenses need to be. And so I know that you're doing things to figure out what your attendance is going to be next year. And so then there's a spot where you can get innovation points for having a management review. Some of you in Region 1 have had a TASBO management review, and I hope you got good value out of it. Looking for efficiency and economy, student achievement. How do you tie increases in student achievement back to the budget in a very thoughtful way? Michelle Trongard at Mansfield ISD is one of the best at tying the strategic plan to the budget. How do you, different ways that you've communicated and what have you. So the applications are due by November 1st. Of all that stuff I said, and there's a whole bunch, it's worth 200 points. And, if you're a large district, it's 150 of those points you have to get. And I've got to tell you, it's not that hard to get to 150. It's just a matter of getting the paperwork together. And if you're a smaller district, you only need 120 points, because there are some things that are scaled to larger districts that you just frankly don't have time to do. And so that's a very, very high level review of the award. I hope you choose to apply. Again, the real experts and the people who've submitted will be doing a webinar on May 13th for TASBO.